Hi, my name is Robert Mullican, and today we're going to talk about 20th Century Fox Film Corporation versus MCA Incorporated, also known as Star Wars versus Battlestar Galactica. Now, why was it known as Star Wars versus Battlestar Galactica? Well, Star Wars was produced in 1977 by 20th Century Fox as well as Lucasfilm, and the following year, 1978, Battlestar Galactica was produced by MCA Inc. This particular case originated in the late 1970s and continued into 1983, and it was a copyright infringement case based on the claim that Battlestar Galactica violated the copyright of George Lucas's original 1976 Star Wars novel and original 1977 film. What's really important to understand about this case is the definition of copyright. And according to the authors of our textbook, Clarkson and Miller, copyright is defined as an intangible property right granted by federal statute to the author or originator of a literary or artistic production of a specified type. This is very important to understand because a lot of the language pertaining to this case revolves around copyright as well as intellectual property. But before we move on to further into those details, let's talk about the history of 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox was founded in 1915 by a man named William Fox, but it wasn't until 1935 where it merged with another studio, 20th Century, that ultimately gave it the name 20th Century Fox. And they really became recognized by this name in the golden age of Hollywood when they made their impact in the movie industry with their Best Picture winners such as All About Eve and The Sound of Music. In 1977, Star Wars was a massive financial success for 20th Century Fox. It was a box office juggernaut, and it introduced the home video format. Furthermore, in 1997, James Cameron's film Titanic became another financial success for the studio, and it was the highest grossing film of all time when it was released, as well as his next film, Avatar, in 2009, which became the highest grossing film of all time and still is to this day. In addition, 20th Century Fox had some more Best Picture winners in the 21st century, such as Slumdog Millionaire, 12 Years a Slave, and Birdman. In 2019, Walt Disney purchased the rights to the content library of 20th Century Fox, which gave them a much larger content library. So this also means that the final year of recorded financial data for 20th Century Fox was 2018. In the 2017 to 2018 fiscal year, 20th Century Fox recorded 7% increase in revenues. Their income sources were affiliate fees, advertising, and content. There was a 14.5% net profit margin and $11.1 billion of working capital. So the lawsuit impact on these companies is interesting because there was no accessible documented evidence of the financial impact for either company, primarily because this was an old case settled in 1983. But also this case was settled out of court, meaning that we don't know how much money 20th Century Fox ultimately acquired from MCA Incorporated based on the lawsuit. However, history does side with Star Wars. It is far more successful. It's the second highest grossing film franchise of all time. And as you can see here, there's a lot of fans dressed as Star Wars characters at some type of convention or film premiere. And you don't really see this with Battlestar Galactica, primarily because its original run was canceled during the lawsuit before it even completed. So you might ask yourself, what were the company practices and methods of MCA Inc. that led to the claim of this case? So it was proven that Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica had a lot of similarities that were a bit too close for comfort. And so Battlestar Galactica creators and producers were accused of violating the copyright. And also in 1977, when Star Wars was released, it became a popular cultural icon and it really revolutionized the science fiction genre. So copyright infringement was essentially inevitable because of how popular the genre was at the time. So more about the similarities between the two franchises. A lot of 20th Century Fox's argument revolved around those similarities. In the court opinion, they said that over 30 similarities were mentioned in the case. However, they didn't even mention 20 of them. They mentioned around 15 because of simplicity's sake. So some of those similarities pertain to the central conflict of the story, the family dynamics of the characters, governmental forces, destruction of a planet, imprisonment of a heroine in the story, destruction of a family home, romantic dynamics between characters, portrayal of a robot, stylistic appearances, the climatic plot point of the story, and the ceremonial conclusion. Furthermore, Battlestar Galactica producers and creators and the attorneys representing them did not dispute any of the provided evidence that the attorneys representing 20th Century Fox provided. In addition, they admitted to having access to the original Star Wars film, meaning that they were inspired by the film and that they did violate the copyright of the franchise. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit agreed with 20th Century Fox, and they stated that they concluded that the films do in fact raise genuine questions of material fact as to whether only the Star Wars idea or the expression of the idea was copied. Personally, I don't see any possible alternatives that MCA Inc. could have won this case. One possible argument that they could have made could have been that Star Wars copied previous science fiction films because of the similarities in the genre. However, 20th Century Fox would have been protected by compilation of facts, which is when a current work is formed by the collection of pre-existing materials and creating its own original body of work. So if they tried to claim that 2001: A Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes, or other films such as Metropolis were heavily inspired Star Wars and they violated the copyrights of those films, compilation of facts would have protected it. For example, the Star Wars art director was inspired by the robots that are featured in the film called Silent Running. However, the robots in Star Wars and Silent Running are not similar in appearance whatsoever. It's only the functionalities of the robots that are somewhat similar. However, it's Star Wars as a whole that constitutes an original body of work, not the similar functionalities of robots that do not violate any copyright. I personally agree with 20th Century Fox, and I believe that their actions were completely justified. Evidence clearly points to copyright infringement on MCA's part, as well as the producers and creators of Battlestar Galactica. There are enough similarities to show that the films were indeed very similar, and the Battlestar Galactica creators lacked any form of rebuttal to the copyright infringement evidence. I hope you found this particular presentation to be interesting and informative, and I thank you for listening to today's presentation.